Hey, welcome back to the show, MetFlex and Chill. This is your host, Rachel Gregory, and today I have another solo episode for you. So today I'm answering your questions based off of my Instagram question box. So every Monday I will post a question box on Instagram and ask you to ask me a question. And in this question box, you can ask me anything you want related to nutrition, fitness, life, mindset, anything like that that you want me to address and answer on the podcast. So today I'm answering two questions. The first one is, what is your morning routine? The second one is, what is a typical day of eating and training like for you? And also, what is your macro split? So I decided to put these two questions together because I think they obviously relate to each other and it would be a good kind of complement to each other, and I can kind of just flow through my entire day and give you an idea of what it's like. Currently, we are in quarantine right now, so I'm going to give you kind of a little bit of an idea of what I'm doing right now in quarantine, but then also kind of give you a taste of what my quote unquote normal days look like outside of quarantine, just so you can kind of get an idea of that. And we also have a giveaway today. So today's giveaway is sponsored by Redmond Life. And it actually lines up perfectly for today's episode because I use Redmond Life products every single day. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that. I use their salt specifically every single day, multiple times a day. So for this giveaway, 3 winners are each going to receive the Rachel Gregory Redmond Bundle. So I actually have a bundle on the Redmond Life website of a few of the products that I enjoy and I use on a daily basis. So we put that into a bundle for anyone to purchase. So I'll link that below. But Redmond is being kind enough and giving away 3 of these bundles to all of you. So if you're interested in entering the giveaway, I'll give you the specifics on that. But I first want to just mention what's inside the bundle. So the bundle includes a 16-ounce package of Redmond Real Salt. It includes a bunch of mini salt shakers. It also includes 1 bottle of charcoal cucumber clay mask and 1 bentonite clay mask. So these are all awesome products, and I hope you enter the giveaway to hopefully win them. So to enter the giveaway, if you're not familiar with how these giveaways work, the first thing is just subscribe to the MetFlex and Chill podcast. So hopefully if you're listening to this, you have already subscribed. So that's the first thing. The next thing is leave a rating review mentioning something that you learned or that you took away from this specific episode. So that's the main way to enter. If you have already entered a previous giveaway or if you've already left a rating review, you can still enter this giveaway. All you have to do is take a screenshot of this episode as you're listening to it, post it on your Instagram story, and tag me at rachelgregory.cns, and you'll be entered to win as well. So those are the ways to enter. And Redmond Life is an amazing company. Their biggest main product is their salt, which I'm going to talk about a little bit because I use it, like I mentioned, every single day. So I'll talk about how I use it in my daily routine. And it's very important to get a really good quality salt. It's the average salt that you find, just your typical table salt, is just not good for you. It's stripped of all its nutrients. It's bleached. A lot of them have like residues of plastic because it comes from the ocean. So plastic and waste products and all of that is in this salt, and you're actually consuming that. So that's why it's super important to get a high quality salt. I actually dive a little bit deeper into the entire subject of salt and why it's important and why the quality is important in the episode that I did with Dr. Ken Berry called Lies My Doctor Told Me. So I'll link that in the show notes if you haven't listened to that episode too, you can check that out. We dive into the importance of salt and why we both choose Redmond as our main salt source. And again, to check out that bundle, I will link it in the show notes. You can swipe up to view the show notes. Again, the show notes swipe up if you're on iTunes. If you're listening somewhere else, you should see the show notes as well. But the show notes always include links to anything that I talk about so that you have easy access to those. And then also timestamps for different subjects that I go through in case you want to go back and re-listen to a specific point or something like that. So if you're listening on iTunes, you can just swipe up while you're listening and you can check out all of those links and anything that I reference in the episode. All right, so let's get into the first question. What's your morning routine? So typically I wake up anywhere between 5 and 5:30, especially on the weekdays. I make sure that I have my feet on the floor by 5:30. On the weekends, sometimes it's between 6 and 6:30, but usually my body wakes up pretty much on the same schedule, or at least I try to make that happen. And it usually happens, especially, on the weekends. Even if I try to sleep in a little bit, it usually doesn't happen, which is okay. I try to get to bed at a decent time, which everybody should. Sleep is super, super important. So I wake up around 5:30. I go to the bathroom, brush my teeth, put my contacts in. I told you I'm going to get really detailed with this, just so you can see exactly what I do and have kind of a look into my daily life, if you're interested. If you're not interested, then maybe skip past this part, but hopefully you're listening and you're interested and you'll take away some things that maybe you can implement into your morning routine to help kind of level up your day. And so also, just to kind of talk about that, my morning routine has developed over the years. Like, it did not all start with all of this. I've kind of built things up as I've gone along. And I also have my own personal coach who has helped me to be accountable for this morning routine, which I'm going to talk about in a second. But things like meditation and journaling and those things, my coach holds me accountable for that. And that has helped me to build up those habits over time to the point where I don't need to be held accountable for them anymore, because now I see how they benefit me so much. And it's something that I look forward to. So, okay, now I'm getting off topic, but just to continue. So after I brush my teeth, put my contacts in, I turn my coffee on. So I drink Purity coffee every morning. Purity coffee is the highest quality coffee that I found on the market. It's organic, it's free of pesticides, it's fresh. I get it delivered to me every single month. I'll add a link in the show notes so you can check it out. And I believe if you follow that link, you can get 10 to 15% off your first bag if you want to try it out. Or I think there's a discount code. It's Killing It Keto, I believe. I'm not positive on that one. I have to double check that. But anyway, the link will be in the show notes. So if you're interested in checking out more about Purity Coffee, check out that link. You can learn more about it and try out a bag for a discounted price. So after I put my coffee on, I actually, depending on my goals at that time of the year, I will weigh myself every single morning. So for example, right now I'm in a fat loss phase, or a quote unquote cut. And so the reason why I weigh myself every morning is not because of the actual daily weight. It's actually because I want to get an accurate weekly average weight. So I talk about this in a blog post that I wrote. It's called The Scale Doesn't Always Matter, but Sometimes It Does. And I will link that in the show notes as well. I dive into all of the reasons why the scale can be helpful, but then some of the ways that a lot of people are using the scale in the wrong way. So the scale can be a great tool if you use it appropriately. There's a lot of people, especially women, that I've seen and that I've done in the past for a long time, using the scale in a way that becomes obsessive and starts to actually hinder results. So the biggest takeaway I would say with the scale is that if you are using the scale to track progress, you want to use it and look at it on a weekly average basis, not a daily basis, because there's so many different factors that change what the scale tells you. And I dive into that in the blog post. But the moral of the story with the scale, I'm not going to go too far into this, but definitely check out the blog post, is that the reason why I do it on a daily basis is because I want to get an accurate weekly average. So I don't care about what the scale is doing on a day-to-day basis. I care about what it's doing on a weekly average basis, depending on what my goals are. So I don't necessarily weigh myself 24/7, 365 days a year. But if I have a specific goal in mind, which I do right now, then I will weigh myself on a daily basis. And that is data that I will use and that my coach will use to help me with making adjustments to whatever I'm doing at that time. So again, I'll link the blog post in the show notes so you can check out all of the reasons why the daily fluctuations in the scale don't matter, but how you can actually use the scale correctly to help you with your goals rather than hinder. So on Mondays, I also do body tape measurements. I actually do body tape measurements pretty much throughout the entire year, usually on a bi-weekly basis if I don't have a specific goal. But if I have a specific goal, which right now, like I mentioned, I'm in a fat loss phase or a cut. So I will do body tape measurements every single Monday morning. This is a huge piece of tracking your goals and tracking your body composition changes. If you're just relying on the scale, you're missing out on a lot of things. So every Monday morning, I take my own body tape measurements and I put them in my tracker for my coach to see. This is something that I do with all of my one-on-one clients as well, and clients in my Keto For Women program. So I do those on Monday, and then after that and on regular days, I meditate and I do red light therapy for 10 minutes. So this is something I do every single morning. Again, this took me a lot of time to actually build up and do on a consistent basis. And it actually took some accountability. My coach holding me accountable to do this for several months before it became something that I really found was helping me. And again, now it's not something that I need to be held accountable for, even though I do still check it off on my tracker for my coach, but it's something that I look forward to and I know helps me. So it's just a habit that I've formed. So I meditate for 10 minutes and I also do the red light therapy at the same time. And I listen to Sam Harris's Waking Up app as my guided 10-minute meditation. Then after I finish my meditation, I do stretches for about 5 to 10 minutes. So I suffered from a back injury. I guess it's been about a year or two now. And so I have specific stretches that I go through to help with preventing any future back injuries. And so I do this every morning. I notice that if I miss my stretches for, a period of time, I can start to feel that again. I can start to feel kind of the aches and pains coming back from that injury. And so this is something that I probably will be doing forever. Back injuries are super annoying. They're something that it's really hard to completely go away once you have one, especially if it's a lower back injury. So doing things like stretches and mobility and stuff like that every single day can really help. And I've noticed a huge difference over the past year and a half since I've been implementing this on a daily basis. So after I finish my stretches, I go get my coffee. It's made, it's done. I put different things in my coffee, depending on, I usually switch it up every few months, but I've actually been sticking to a pretty consistent routine right now. And I actually wrote a blog post about my coffee stack a little while ago. So I'll link that in the show notes as well. But generally I put super creamer coffee creamer in my coffee. I put L-theanine, cinnamon, a little bit of salt, Redmond Real Salt. And what else do I put in there? And sometimes I put a little bit of monk fruit because I do like my coffee with a touch of sweetness. But again, I'll link the blog post in the show notes where I go through exactly what I put in my coffee and why. So you can kind of get an idea of the reasoning behind how I make my coffee. So then I grab my coffee and I journal for 5 to 10 minutes. So I follow either a journal prompt that my coach provides me with, or currently I'm using Brendon Burchard's journal. So I go through the daily prompts that are in there for about 10 minutes. There's another journal called the 5-minute journal, which you can buy on Amazon. That's a great option if you're just getting into journaling, or you can kind of just sit there for 5 to 10 minutes and just write out, things that you're thankful for, things maybe that you did yesterday that you want to level up today or something, just something. It can be anything that you want, anything that you find helpful that gets you into kind of that positive mindset. I think that's the most important part of journaling in the morning, is really kind of getting those positive juices flowing. So I journal for 5 to 10 minutes. And then after journaling, I read. So I've developed this over the past few months. I used to just read one book, and a few months ago, I realized that I kind of have 2 different goals and different things that kind of set me up for a productive day. And one of them is to read a self-development or business-related book for about 20 to 30 minutes. Currently, I'm finishing The One Thing by Keller. And then the other reading I do is more of a nutrition or fitness-related book, just so that I can kind of continue to learn and continue to grow in that area. That's obviously the area that I'm very focused on. That's what my business is. That's what I do as a nutritionist and an online coach and trainer. So I want to progress in that area. So I read a nutrition or fitness type book for about 20, 30 minutes as well. And I'm currently finishing up the book, The Hungry Brain by Stephen Guyenet. I can never say his last name, but that is an awesome book. So I'm almost finished with those. And then I'm going to be starting 2 new books, hopefully next week. So I'm excited about that. Then after I finish my reading, I actually fill out my tracker. So I have a Google Excel tracker that I share with my coach. And it's really an accountability tracker. And also it includes specific goals that I'm working towards. So accountability is so important. It's something that completely changed my life. I talk about this a lot with my clients and with even on social media. Like, accountability is such a big piece of the puzzle that a lot of people are missing. And so if you don't have someone, if you have specific goals and you don't have someone, specifically a coach, holding you accountable for those goals, it's much harder to reach those goals, and it's going to take you a lot more time, and you're going to be spinning your wheels a lot. So accountability is just so important. I can't express it enough. But it's something that has completely changed my life. So every single morning, I fill out my accountability tracker. So let me actually pull this up real quick to tell you what I fill out. So mostly it is biofeedback measures. So let's see here. So every morning I will fill out my tracker. So the first thing is I check off if I did my morning routine and my morning stretches or not. Again, this is what my coach holds me accountable for. This piece of it, again, I've evolved to not even probably need to be accountable for this anymore, because I do my morning routine and I do my morning stretches every day. It's become a habit. It's become something that I know if I miss it, that it affects me in a negative way for the day. But I still check it off, because just physically checking that off, it's just part of my day now. And it's part of that, just part of my tracker. So I track that, or I check off that. Then part of my tracker as well is I track my sleep. So I track if I have trouble falling asleep the night before. I track how many hours of sleep I got the night before. And then I also rate my sleep quality on a scale of 1 to 5. And then I'll fill in my weight. And then I'll also, for me, track my morning hunger. That's something that I've been tracking lately, especially with being in this fat loss phase. It's something I want to pay attention to. So I'm keeping track of that on a daily basis and using those biofeedback markers with my coach as well. So again, it's so important that if you have specific goals, and even if you just have goals in general and you've been struggling with them, having a coach is just a complete game changer. And that's why I have my own coach, and that's why I coach my own individual clients. So if you are interested in potentially doing one-on-one coaching with me, I'll link my one-on-one coaching application in the show notes. You can fill it out, and if you're interested, we can go from there. So yeah, on Mondays also, I do fill out my personal weekly check-in for my coach. And again, I do body tape measurements on Mondays. So that's something that's part of my Monday routine. I guess my Monday morning routine is a little bit more extensive than my every other day routine. Yeah, that's what I do on Mondays. So after I finish filling out my tracker, I'll get my second cup of coffee. I generally have 3 cups of coffee in the morning, spread throughout the morning. And these are like regular cups of coffee, not like humongous cups of coffee. And then I'll also eat breakfast, depending on if I'm hungry or not, and also depending on what stage I'm in, really. It differs throughout the year. Right now, I am in this fat loss phase. I'm in this cut. So I've been a little bit more hungry lately, and I've noticed that some days I'll just want to eat breakfast. Some days I won't want to eat breakfast. And I'm trying to listen to that hunger a little bit more and just become more mindful and more intuitive of that. So recently I've been eating breakfast lately. I'm not going to go into fasting and how I incorporate that too much. I'll talk a little bit about that, but I'm not going to dive into that, because I'll go down the rabbit hole with fasting. But anyway, lately I've been eating breakfast, and also I used to bring my coffee and my breakfast back to my desk after I finish my morning routine, and then start working while eating, if I was eating breakfast, which is usually hard-boiled eggs is what I usually have for breakfast. But lately I've been actually enjoying that at the dining room table. So I kind of take 10 to 15 more minutes right after I finish my morning routine, and I just become mindful of what I'm doing. And so I think this is super important. If you're, working and eating and scrolling through Instagram and eating, it's a lot. First of all, it messes with your digestion, and it messes with kind of the relationship you have with your food, because if you're just scarfing it down, you're not enjoying it, then one, it's harder to become fuller. You'll notice that if you pay attention to your food and if you're actually just focused on your food, chewing your food, enjoying it, you'll actually become more full than if you were to be watching TV and scrolling through Instagram and working while you're eating and things like that. So lately, that's been one of my goals, is to just become more mindful as I'm eating my meals. And I've noticed it's really helped me just, actually feel full after the meal and feel satisfied. So I think that's one huge tip that I would recommend if you have been kind of scarfing down your food and doing other things at the same time. Taking time to just focus on eating and only doing that is very, very beneficial. So after I eat, I officially start my workday. I start with my most important or creative task first, and then I move from there. So I'll talk about kind of the rest of my day when I get into the next question. But again, as I mentioned, I stick to this morning routine every single day. It's taken me time to really build it up. So I only started with doing like 20 to 30 minutes and eventually built up to now it's about an hour and a half. But it has made such a difference in how I start my days. And I look forward to my morning routine every single morning. Like I wake up excited for my morning routine, which then excites me for the day. It just makes me so much more productive, so much more focused, and again, just excited about the day. So I would say if you are struggling with implementing a morning routine or you don't know where to start, don't start with trying to implement like an hour and a half. Just start with little things. Do 10 minutes, 5 minutes. Start with one thing. Maybe it's journaling. Maybe you start with 5 to 10 minutes of journaling. Maybe you start with 5 to 10 minutes of meditation. Just start small and kind of build it up. And you'll realize that, once you kind of build up into this routine that you're excited about, it just becomes something that starts your day so just amazing, and you just look forward to it, and it's just awesome. So another thing is also, if you are struggling to implement a morning routine, for me, this is where I was like a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, when I hired my own coach and I had him hold me accountable for following through with the specific things throughout my morning routine. That's when it changed. So I would go through a morning routine and stick with it for maybe like a week or two, and then I'd stop doing it, and then I'd go back to it, and then I'd stop doing it. But when I had someone holding me accountable, now it's just something that I do. It's a habit, and it's become something that I know if I don't do, then it kind of sets my day up for failure. So more of the story, if you're struggling with setting up a morning routine or implementing specific things within that morning routine, get someone who can hold you accountable, specifically a coach. If you're interested in working with me, I will again link the application to one-on-one coaching in the show notes, and you can check that out. Okay, getting into the next question, what's a typical day of eating and training like for you, and what is your macro split? So again, I'm going to chat about what I'm doing right now. We're in quarantine right now, so I'm going to chat about what I'm doing right now, and then I'll also just give you kind of what a typical day looks like. So right now in quarantine, and for kind of my nutrition, for the nutrition side of things and my eating side of things, like I mentioned, I'm in a fat loss phase. I'm in a cut. So for the past few weeks, I've been experimenting with more frequent meals and also less intermittent fasting. Except for one day a week, I do a PSMF day, which is a protein sparing modified fast day. I'm not going to get into super specifics on this, but it is something that I implement in my Keto For Women program as a tool or a strategy to use when you're in a fat loss phase or a cut. And so if you're interested in that, I will also link the Keto For Women program below in the show notes. You can check it out and get on the waiting list if you're a woman and you're interested in joining and learn more about it. I'll link that below. But that is something that I implement once a week. It's a strategy that I use, especially when I'm in a fat loss phase or cut. So that's kind of my nutrition lately has been eating a little bit more frequently. In terms of meals, I eat more meals than usual. So probably about 5 meals a day. And those include snacks too. But that's kind of like, it's 5 to 6 meals, including snacks on a more frequent basis. And then one day a week, I do a PSMF day. So not too much intermittent fasting except for that one PSMF day. Training wise, I am following a program, an at-home lifting program. So my coach writes my programming for me as well. And that's something that I do for my clients. So I think that's another important piece of the puzzle is if you have specific goals and you're writing your own programming and you're not seeing results and you're kind of getting burnt out from that, then it may be time to hire your own coach or invest in a training program yourself. But for these at-home workouts, I actually talk all about this in the last solo episode I did. I go into, how to implement at-home workouts effectively and some tips and tricks for how you can do that. So I'll link that in the show notes if you want to check it out. It's the Shifting Your Goals and Mindset solo episode. So right now I'm following a 4-day push-pull split, and I'm also doing 2 cardio and conditioning days. So for my movement and my cardio right now, I'm doing a lot of walking outside, obviously avoiding people and staying 6 feet away, if not more. But my normal kind of walking on a normal basis, I try to get at least 10K steps a day. Right now, I'm actually aiming for 13K steps a day, at least 2 to 3 days a week. So that's kind of part of, again, I'm in a fat loss phase, I'm in a cut, so I'm ramping up my movement a little bit more. So my goal is to get a little bit more than 10K, so around 13K, 2 to 3 times a week as part of kind of my cardio. So that's my movement and my cardio, my kind of non-exercise activity thermogenesis, which I talk about a lot. And within my cardio as well, I do have 2 sessions a week right now, and I am using the assault bike that I was lucky enough to get from my old CrossFit gym. Again, we're in quarantine, so limited equipment, but I was able to get that. So I do 2 cardio and conditioning sessions a week. I do 1 aerobic session right now, and that's about 30 minutes of a brisk pace on the assault bike. I keep my heart rate around 120, 130-ish. And then I also do 1 anaerobic session of bike sprints. And this progresses each week. So as I go through my training program, again, my coach wrote this for me. It progresses on a weekly basis, my anaerobic sessions. And you can think of aerobic sessions are more like steady heart rate, kind of, you're working hard for, it's also known as like a LIST session, a low intensity steady state, or a moderate intensity steady state session. Those are my aerobic sessions. And then the anaerobic sessions you can think of as more like high intensity HIIT workouts. So those progress on a weekly basis based off of the programming that I'm following and also what my goals are. So right now, for example, I'll just give you a quick example. So I started off with week 1 of this programming. It was 12 seconds all out effort on the assault bike every 2 minutes for 10 rounds. And then week 2, it went to 15 seconds all out every 2.5 minutes for 8 rounds. Week 3, 20 seconds all out every 3.5 minutes for 6 rounds, and kind of progressing from there. So that's my HIIT workout, I guess you could call it, for the week. So that's what I've been doing in quarantine. So I want to talk a little bit about what my quote unquote normal day outside of quarantine would usually look like. So this evolves and changes with my goals and with what I'm doing, and, if I'm traveling a lot versus if I'm home a lot, it changes, right? It evolves. And for everyone, things are always changing. So this would be like my usual kind of baseline day, I guess you could call it. So on a normal basis, if I'm not in a fat loss phase or in a cut or whatever, maybe if I'm just maintaining, right? I don't have a specific goal. Usually on a normal day, I'll do intermittent fasting, and I'll just have coffee and MCT powder or super creamer in my coffee with some of the other things that I talked about in the beginning of this episode. And I'll do that usually because I wake up and I'm not really hungry. But some days I am. So if I am hungry, which is something that I've worked on for the past 2 years, I used to do a lot of chronic fasting, and I've worked on that. And now I'm kind of in a good place where I can, some days I'll do some intermittent fasting, some days I won't. So if I wake up and I am hungry, I'll eat some hard-boiled eggs, usually as my go-to breakfast after I finish my morning routine. And this is something I talk about again in my Keto For Women program. I have a whole lesson on fasting for women specifically, and why you don't want to be going down the rabbit hole of fasting, and the importance of knowing when too much is too much. And so we discuss that a lot. So this is for my nutrition on a normal day, like a normal baseline day. So I'll have that coffee with MCTs in the morning after my morning routine, probably around like 7:30. And then if I'm hungry, I'll have some hard-boiled eggs during that time. Then I'll have a pre-workout meal around 10 o'clock, sometimes 9:30, depends. And usually that pre-workout meal will be a combination of either sweet potatoes or kabocha squash, which is, if you know me, you know that's one of my favorite foods. Then it'll also have some type of green veggie, some type of lean protein, and then some fat source. So that's my pre-workout meal. I also discussed all about pre-workout nutrition in the previous solo episode. So I will link that in the show notes as well if you're interested in how to kind of put together your own pre-workout nutrition based on your goals, based on the type of workout you're doing and different factors like that. And then I walk to the gym. This is a normal day, obviously. I walk to the gym. I leave around 11. I get there around 11:20. It's about a 3/4 mile walk. And that helps me get my steps in for the day as well. I work out till probably around 1:30, depending on the day. So if I incorporate a little bit of cardio after my workout, it'll be a longer day in the gym. If I don't, it'll be a shorter day. But again, it just depends what I'm doing and what phase of my training I'm in. But my basis of training is all resistance training. I don't implement cardio unless it's, I implement cardio maybe on at least one day a week, 2 days a week, just for the aerobic, just to build up that aerobic system. And then depending on what my goals are past that, I'll implement cardio depending on that. So, but the basis of my training is resistance training, and my splits differ depending on what phase I'm in. So right now I mentioned I'm in a push-pull 4-day per week split. I do not usually, but I've done upper, lower body splits. What else? There's different splits. It depends on what I'm going through and what phase of my training and my goals. And I work with my coach on that, and he helps me with programming that. So after I finish at the gym, I walk back home. I eat lunch around 2, and then I, just get back to work. If I'm hungry, I'll probably eat like a little snack in the afternoon around 4. Usually just a smaller snack. Maybe it's some hard-boiled eggs again. Maybe it's some like olives and avocado, things like that. And then I try to go on an afternoon walk or a pre-dinner walk for about 30 to 60 minutes, around 5:30. I kind of just get out of the house, and that's more of my like learning time, I call it. So every day I try to learn. I learn in the morning, during my morning routine when I read my books, and then I try to also learn in the afternoon. So that's a huge piece of it. That's a huge piece of what I think is important, especially when I'm trying to teach my clients and teach all of you as much as I can. I have to learn myself, right? And I have to continue to learn on a daily basis. And if I don't do that, then I can't teach what I'm learning, right? And I can't progress in my own education and in my own research. So that walk is usually either I listen to a podcast or an audiobook, or I listen to or watch like a course that I'm taking, maybe on YouTube. I'm always trying to learn, and I think that's super important if you are a coach or if you're anybody out there who's just trying to become better at something. You have to always iron out a part of your day that is quote unquote learning time. So after I go on my walk, I come back, finish up work, and then I try to eat dinner around 6:37. Then I'll have like an after dinner snack or dessert around 7:38. If you follow me on Instagram, you know that this is usually like a protein ice cream, which I make a lot. I have the recipe in my Hunger Hacks ebook and also on my website. So I'll link that below if you're interested. Or I'll have some electrolyte jello. Those are my main go-tos. And then sometimes I'll experiment with some other things, but I love having I love having a dessert or snack after dinner. It's just something that I look forward to. And so I structure my day so that I can include that. So after my after dinner snack or dessert, if you want to call it, I usually just relax and watch TV for a little bit. And that is something that it just helps me kind of turn my brain off. I've tried to do some more reading and not watch TV, but sometimes it's just nice to just be dumb for a second, especially when I'm trying to wind down at night. Like I always have thoughts racing through my head and like just things that I'm thinking about and that I'm excited about. And so if I, read another book or if I'm listening to another podcast, it actually kind of ramps me up a little bit more. So it's hard to kind of wind down for the night. So I sometimes just, put on Netflix or put on a show and just have quote unquote dumb time for like an hour at night. And that just, for me personally, just helps me get out of my head, helps me relax and kind of wind down for the night. And then also while I'm doing that, I will fill out my tracker. So the remaining things that I have in my tracker that I track for myself and my coach, I'll sit on the couch and just fill that out on my phone. So I fill out my macros for the day. If I'm tracking, I'll fill out my steps for the day. I have some other biofeedback measures. So let me just pull this up real quick. I also fill out my general hunger throughout the day. So my hunger level on a scale of 1 to 5. I'll fill out my workout performance on a scale of 1 to 5. So how my performance was. My recovery on a scale of 1 to 5. So how I felt recovery wise. And then I'll just take any notes for anything else that I noticed throughout the day or anything that I want to, tell my coach. So these are just markers that are super, super important that I recommend if you work with a coach or anything like that. Always tracking these biofeedback measures on a daily basis just gives you so much information that you can work with to make adjustments for whatever your goals are. And also I'll mention that like when I do watch TV and at night, anytime past 7, I always put on blue light blocking glasses. I think this is something that's super important for anybody who is looking at any screens at night. Blue light, your computer, TV, you should be wearing some type of blue light blocking glasses because that artificial blue light can actually interfere with your melatonin production and winding you down for the night. And so that is something that's important and that I would recommend. And then I try to be in bed around 9:30, 10. Sometimes it's earlier. Sometimes it's a little bit later. If I go anywhere past like 10:30, I definitely feel it the next day. So I try to be in bed around 9:30. Yeah, that's my typical day. And I wake up and I repeat. So lastly, just to answer the last half of the question, which was, what was it? What is your macro split? Okay. So I generally don't give out my personal macro split or tell people what it is because one, it changes based on what my goals are and also changes like depending on what I'm experimenting with, what season it is, again, it just comes back to my goals and what's going on. And so everyone's different. And I don't like to just give out my current split because I used to be there like years ago thinking that if I wanted to look or perform like someone else, then I should be following exactly the intake of what they're consuming in terms of macros. But that's not the case. Like you are your own individual and what works for you and what works for me, what works for someone else, they're not going to jive, right? So what works for someone else is not going to work for you. It might, but usually it doesn't. So you have to realize that when we're talking macros, this is why having a coach is just super important, not only to hold you accountable for all the things that I just talked about, but also to help you kind of see things that you can't see and help you make adjustments that maybe you don't know how to make or you're not familiar with making, and then also just help you get out of your own head. So for example, I know how to make macro calculations and adjustments, right? Like I do it for my own clients every single day, but my coach does that for me because I'm busy doing it for my clients and I just don't want to do it myself. Like I don't want to think about that and I don't want to put that power into my own hands because I might not be seeing some other things that my coach is seeing based off of all the biofeedback measurements, based off of my progress, based off of everything else. So again, my macro split is not going to be your macro split. It's not going to be someone else's macro split. It's different based on the individual. And it all depends on what your personal goals are, what your personal history is. There's just so many different factors. So I'm not going to tell you what my macro split is because I don't want you to go follow my personal macro split thinking that you're going to get the same results that I'm getting because that's not how it works. So yeah, I'm going to leave that there. But if you're interested in one-on-one coaching, I'll link the application in the show notes and you can check that out. All right, thanks for listening to this Q&A solo episode. Remember again to enter the giveaway with Redmond Life. 3 winners are each going to receive the Rachel Gregory Redmond Bundle. So again, to enter, all you have to do is make sure you're subscribed to this podcast leave a rating and review. And if you've already done that for previous giveaways or just in the past, you can take a screenshot of this episode, share it on your Instagram, and tag me at rachelgregory.cns. So again, I hope you took away some different tips and tricks and maybe some things that you can implement into your own daily routine based off of what I shared for mine. And if you have any other questions, always feel free to reach out. I will be putting a question box on my story every Monday on Instagram, and you can also feel free to email me or contact me through my website with any other questions that you want me to address. I'll link that in the show notes as well. And to check out the show notes, if you're listening on iTunes, just swipe up and you can see everything we talked about, links that I mentioned, previous episodes that I mentioned, and all of that. So again, I hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope you took something away from it, and I will see you next time.